This is Jack of the Jack Chat Show. I'm your host and presenter, also a near-death experiencer. And the Jack Chat Show I have devised to help reduce the fear of the end of life, of death. I'm hoping that I'm succeeding. The Jack Chat Show is something that is so homegrown that I am almost loath to say this, but and it sounds very much, I know, like I'm making an excuse. But those of you who are regular viewers of the Jack Chat Show on www.jackchatshow.com know that the new video of the new chat normally goes live on Tuesdays. Today is Tuesday night. In fact, it's almost Wednesday morning here in southern Arizona. And I'm only now recording this thing. What happened was a weather system. It's all Ma Nature's fault. There was a weather system that came moseying up Baja California and across the Sea of Cortez, Baja, Mexico, beg your pardon, and up the Sea of Cortez, called Hurricane Polanco. Tucson in southern Arizona, where I am right now, is well inland, and we don't normally get the effects of a hurricane. But we did. Yesterday and the day before, I was laid low. The energy, the vibrations of this weather system just knocked me out. Now, the strange thing for me is that I grew up in what I call the civilized part of South Africa, down around Cape Town. Marvelous, the beauty, the mountains, the wine, the beaches. It's civilized. Anyway, and the Cape of Good Hope is also known at times as the Cape of Storms. More shipwrecks down there than you can count. And strangely enough, what with the thunder and the lightning and the rain pelting down June, July, August, which of course is the winter in the southern hemisphere, I never felt anything. But with these hurricanes in the northern hemisphere, I was laid low. Enough of an excuse. The only thing I'd like you to consider that as a near-death experiencer, I feel energy very easily. And why I say this, it's not just a hurricane that does this. Back when, with that very near tragedy of the earthquake off the coast of Japan and the Fukushima nuclear plant meltdown, or near meltdown, I was laid low for nearly a week and a half. I wasn't ill. I just couldn't move or barely move. And a friend of mine in California alerted me to the fact that the vibrations of the earthquake itself had, of course, landed up in the atmosphere around the planet, and the vibrations had circumnavigated the planet. And I was experiencing those vibrations. Go figure. That's the downside of being a near-death experience, if there is anyone. To get down to chatting, I suppose Jung would call it a synchronous event. I often refer to it as coincidence, but I'd scheduled the time on the server for this chat. I had gotten everything together, made certain the earplugs were in, made certain the volume of the lights were, etc., etc. And I was sitting here with a book, the handbook of near-death experiences by Janice Holden, Bruce Grayson, and Debbie James. I've met all three of these marvelous researchers. In fact, Janice very nicely autographed this book to me and made a lovely comment about my art as well. That's enough of a plug for the Handbook of Near-Death Experiences. End of public service announcement. But I opened this book purely at random, and I've been searching. In fact, I just before we went on the air, I was trying to remember if I'd actually asked the universe for guidance on this matter, because as a near-death experiencer, maybe facetiously, maybe egotistically, I feel there is very little information that can be that can be communicated to the planet, other than from a near-death experiencer who's been to the other side, like myself. I've looked in psychology texts. I've looked in philosophy. There's, of course, is Plato. I've looked in theology. There's St. Paul and his out-of-body experience, his near-death experience, and the change in character. But there's very, very little explaining what happens on the other side until I opened the book. Page 172. There are celestial bodies and there are terrestrial bodies, but the glory of the celestial is one, and the terrestrial is another. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. It is sown a physical body, it is raised a spiritual body. Hey, have I said that? If there is a physical body, there is also a spiritual body. I tell you this, my brethren, the flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. That quotation, as it's page here on page 172, is from the Holy Bible, 1952, 1 Corinthians, verse 15, 32 through 50. I'm not going to plug any religion. That's not me. I go exploring and I find interesting concepts. As I've stated often, to me, religion serves a very useful purpose. It gives masses, people who need some comfort, people who need something to believe in. And religion is there, whatever it is, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, it all serves a purpose, a worthwhile purpose. And then there's another view. Let's not get too deeply into that. Suffice it to say that the trailer I put out a while ago deals with very much along the same lines of vibrations. This hurricane was an ideal illustration of how a sensitive person reacts to a vibration. Now, I've been asked, why is it that it's so difficult to communicate with loved ones who have passed on? Well, it is and it isn't. It's a typical issue of quantum. But I've identified what I call the curtain of consciousness. The vibrations on the other side, in death consciousness, as opposed to consciousness on the earth plane, are not the same vibrations. When the entity on, or the spirit on the earth plane, when the spirit's uh, vibrations are similar to or equal to the vibrations on the other side, that's when things start to happen. Let me tell you a story, a personal uh, anecdote. But before I do that, um, a life coach that I sincerely admire and who's been most helpful for me, Polly Wurum, Wirum. Her website is Pathways to Peace, the two being the numeral two. Polly posed me a question, and she said, Jack, why are you here on Earth? Well, I tried arguing with the being of light, and that's God. And I tried to say, I'm staying here in heaven. One of life's lessons: don't argue with God, you won't win. Why am I here? You might ask yourself that question. It's not an easy question to answer. I'm here, I hope, to discover more about myself, my uppercase S self. I'm here to metaphorically to step off the edge of the ledge. It's a weird mountaineering analogy, stepping off the edge of the ledge. I read it years ago in Conversations with God. It's the IT equivalent is you push the envelope. Well, or I suppose in plain English, you just challenge yourself. I tend to step off the edge of the ledge. That's why I'm here, to push myself further than I believe. And when I do step off the edge of the ledge, I find I can walk in fresh air, like right now at this moment. Here I am doing something I've never done before. Why am I doing it? Mainly to challenge myself and to prove myself when the being of light and I again meet on the other side. And hopefully I merge again with the mind of God. At least God will know I tried. That's why I'm here. A minor, maybe it's this Jack Chat show. Maybe I'm helping to ease the fear of death. I certainly hope I am. I went through divorce years ago. In the process, after divorce was finalized, I met a wonderful woman in New Jersey, Sheila. We had a wonderful romance. Of course, one of the first things she said to me was, Jack, don't fall in love with me. So, of course, what's the very first thing I did? Just fall in love with her. But she kept asking me about my near-death experience. One day, it was my birthday, Sheila gives me a lovely pen and pencil set. We go off that night into Manhattan, come back, I take my jacket off where I put the pen and pencil set. I throw the jacket on the couch. Later on, I sit down on the couch, and inadvertently, I sit down on my jacket. Next day, I take the pen and pencil out of my jacket pocket and find the pen has snapped because I sat on the silly thing. I move out to Arizona, and the plan was that Sheila was going to follow. I was going to find a little piece of land, build my art studio, and we were going to live happily ever after. The best laid plans of mice and men. I was going into an algebra exam at community college. I checked my email, and Sheila has sent me a note to say the doctors opened me up. They looked inoperable lung cancer. They closed me up. They've given me 6 weeks to live. Enough said. One night, not long afterwards, I was fast asleep when Sheila appeared to me in what seemed like a dream. It wasn't. I know she was at the foot of my bed. For the very first time, I heard two marvelous words that she had never uttered on the earth plane. Sheila said, I love you. 3 words, whatever. And she said, you were so correct. It is lovely here. And I must go on with my life's journey. Mark the word, life journey from a spirit that has just passed on. And then she said something that was very interesting to me. I'm so sorry about the pens that were broken in your suit pocket. Go figure. Well, I'm certain that Sheila and I will meet again on the other side, or in another life or something. Emotion is there between the two of us, that I know. Be alert when someone passes on, that when someone you know passes on, especially when there's emotion between you and the spirit that is passed on to the other side. The deeper the emotion, the more the chance could be that the spirit could contact you. It might seem like a lucid dream. Maybe it's not. It could be real. Who knows? I saw my granny and my grandpa, who both of whom I love dearly. My father even more so. And strangely enough, my mother didn't appear to me, or not in the normal thing. The day after I learnt of my mother's passing, I walked out of my residence, and the area around me had hedges. I was walking down the middle of the path, the hedges on each side, when a purple butterfly came down the path towards me between the hedges and flew back and forth in front of me and then flew up and kissed me on the nose. That was Mom saying, au revoir, until we meet again. The fact that, as my father said of my mother, that mother is Margaret Thatcher's identical twin, the Iron Lady, the British Prime Minister. Let's leave that. Dear mother, when I think of her, I do think of Margaret Thatcher as well. Enough said about that. Why is it so difficult to communicate with the other side? Again, I think it's purely because of vibrations. Try meditation, try asking. Ask and it shall be manifested unto you. Open your mind to receiving the emotion, the vibrations of someone who might be trying to contact you. Remember, I am. Anything that follows I am. Those are two very powerful words. I am open to receiving the vibrations or the thoughts. I am open to communicating with a loved one who has passed on. Who knows? It might just work. There are three questions that I have used to uh, to structure the Jack Chat show. We've dealt with what have you done with the life just past. We've dealt with whom have you loved and been loved by. And the third question tonight is what have you learned? Um, uh, Dr. Raymond Moody, and I believe it was also Kenneth Ring and Bruce Grayson, some marvelous NDE researchers, came up with a set of parameters. I think Moody is the one that most people abide by. And one of the parameters of a near death experience is that the experiencer continues learning. But what happened to me was I thought, as a bookseller, being in publishing, the answer, what have you learned, lay in books. It was only after I put myself through the local community college here and then went on to university at my age that I realized, wait a minute, the answer to what have you learned does not lie in some college textbook, astronomical in price as they are. The answer to what have you learned lies within the self. What have I learned? I've learned some issues like my self-worth, improving my ability, one, to communicate, improving my my ability to love. I grew up in a society badly divided, and divided on some idiotic uh, guidelines by uh, apartheid in South Africa, where I grew up, was divided on the color of your skin, as obnoxious as that is now, even as I think about it. But then it was also divided on language and religion. Go figure. Have I learned to love? Yes, I believe I have. I try very hard to be what they call here colorblind. It doesn't always work, of course not. I'm only human, but it doesn't matter the color of a person's skin. So what does matter? It matters the spirit inside. Does it help to use your head? No. The spirit deals with the heart. Whom have you loved and been loved by? What have you learned? Ask yourself those three questions. What have you done with the life just past? Whom have you loved and been loved by? What have you learned? I've said this before, and I honestly feel it's worth repeating. To me, the other side is perfect. But then, as Janice Holden pointed out to me not long ago, there is, other than a loving near death experience, there is a negative experience. I know nothing about the negative experience. I find it very, 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 very difficult to believe. To me, the being of light is perfect love. How does a negative NDE or a negative experience arise? Well, you could read the handbook on near death experiences. Uh, I, I honestly believe it's through suppressed guilt, extreme anger, that dirty four-letter word that starts with an H and ends with an E that I will not repeat. I find it difficult, so I'm not even going to get into this. But I'm reasonably certain that what will create a negative experience, if not in this life, then in lives to come, and that is taking your own life, or even worse, taking the life of someone else, whether it's Homo sapiens, whether it's a tree, whether it's a blade of grass. I know. That's the excuse I use for not mowing the back lawn. Anyway, um, suicide is not an option. Why? The universe is not expecting the spirit. The same as war, terrorism, whatever. Any killing of any sort that is not scheduled by the universe, it upsets the entire balance of the universe. Suicide is not an option. I've said it before, I've said it again. Thank you. And that, I'm pleased to say, is the seventh of the eight Jack chats that I've scheduled in um, in the Pilot One program. I'm pleased to say I'm feeling a heck of a lot better. I'm pleased to say that this show has gone off all right. Next week, there'll be the last of the Pilot One. We'll give it a week, maybe 2 weeks, and we'll launch into Pilot Two. I will hopefully have Polly Worm on as to interview her, and also Max Ryan. And there is someone I met only this evening who I'm hoping to get on the show as well. These people, especially this person I met this evening, will be here to substantiate or to try to substantiate a lot of what I say. But the end message that I'm trying to, the end comfort, the end vibrations, do not, when your time comes, as it will for each and every one of us, go gently into that good night. That's it. Thank you. Hope to see you next time.